let's start with this announcement today that the government is making changes to the Holiday Act and making changes to sick leave as well. There are some things within that seem okay, seem to be on a surface level, not too bad. My personal opinion is when I hear something from this government that you kind of think, oh yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable, I always want to know what's going on behind the scenes. A really good example for people is when they talked about putting $50 million into private hospitals to help get the waiting list done. You're like, oh, I mean, that sounds like a pretty good win-win. I mean, you know, waiting list, the people on the waiting list are taken care of. But then Gary Payenda pointed out to us that if they had to put that $50 million specifically into surgeries in the public system, not only would they have also got rid of the backlog, but they would have had permanent staffing in the public system to continue on with. So it's like, sounds like a good idea. Some fishhooks in it. Is that the case with this? Well, we just thought we'd get an expert on to tell us, a person who is much more knowledgeable in this area. From the CTU, John Crocker joins us. John, good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, evening. Pleasure to.
Very nice to see you. Very nice to have you on. That little setup, did I get anything wrong in that from as the understanding of the release today before we watched the story?
That's completely right. Yeah. Okay. There's more changes than just in sick leave, but that's probably one of the big ticket items. Yeah.
All right. Well, what we'll do is we'll fire off the one news story, as me and you have talked about. I think you feature in this story, but just to give people kind of the background to it, and then we can bounce off the back of that and have a bit of a chat about what's going on. So let us do that. Let's have a look at how it was featured on One News tonight.
Changes are coming to workers' leave entitlements in a major overhaul of the Employment Act, with parents set to be the biggest beneficiaries, according to the Minister. Included in the proposed changes, workers start earning annual leave and sick leave in direct proportion to hours worked. In the present system, you don't get the full leave entitlements until after 12 months of continuous employment. Annual and sick leave can be used to take any part of a day off work. At present, it's paid out as a portion of a working week. And workers...
I don't quite understand that, but maybe we can talk about that afterwards, because any part... We'll talk it through. We'll talk it through.
Returning from parental leave will get paid their full rate for annual leave when they have time off. Currently, annual leave is paid out according to the past 12 months' earnings. To dig into it further, here's business correspondent Jason Walls.
Russell Clements has 16 staff, and he's one of many employers today welcoming the cleaning up of the Holidays Act.
It's going to be fairer all round. It makes it easier for us to just calculate you're sick. It's not which day you are sick on.
Hundreds of thousands of employers will be affected by today's announcement. Here's what it will mean. At the moment, full-time warehouse worker Tama gets 4 weeks annual leave and 10 sick.
I don't know why they've had to give their psychographic person a name. It does feel a bit sort of weird to me. Like, could have just been like a figure, but they've given the person a persona. Not
the
sure
explainer
why.
came with 4 or 5 examples of different workers in different situations, and so this is actually straight out of that.
So this is from the government.
Yeah.
That was another thing I was going to say. I haven't seen you call it the explainer, John, but it does feel very much like the media is reprinting exactly what the government said. I don't know if that's the case or not. It doesn't feel like any sort of analysis has gone into it yet, but I guess that's what people maybe in the media like Jack Tame do, and hopefully the kind of thing we do as well. So it feels like what the media has done is a little bit of a press release for the government. Not saying that's good or bad thing, just because it is found. And you're kind of confirming that to me if this is part of the explainer. But the reporters as of yet haven't dug their teeth into what this means. The Greens have. We'll talk about that maybe in a few minutes.
Days, but only after he's worked for 12 months. Under the new law, he'll begin earning those entitlements as soon as he starts the job, building up 4.5 minutes of annual leave and more than 2 minutes of sick leave for every hour.
Can I just ask one question with a really simple one-word answer, John? Does that still equate out to 10 days over 12 months? The two minutes per hour?
Yeah. It's the minute version of 250 seconds. And 450 seconds on the left, yeah.
So therefore, if you work the whole year and you didn't take any sick leave, you would then have 10 days based out of these numbers they're saying. Because I was thinking, I wonder if this government would try and roll back a little bit where the last guys gave more sick leave, but it is still set at 10 days total?
Yeah, it's in at 10, and even if you take, you still accrue this when you're on paid leave, except no longer on ACC.
Gotcha. All right, that was one of the important questions, so we've got that out of the way already.
He works. The minister responsible says this is a win for everyone.
We know that for decades now, people have been paying their workers incorrectly because the laws have been so complicated to follow, and that's not good for business.
Some are welcoming the changes, saying they'll bring greater certainty to workers and business owners.
They're long overdue, and they'll result in a much fairer, easy-to-follow system for employers.
The Council of Trade Unions welcomes the focus on simplicity, but fears some workers will miss out.
Well, one of the costs is for the part-time workers who are going to get less sick days.
What I've heard really loud and clear is that when Labor came in and increased the sick leave entitlements to 10 days for all workers, no matter how long they worked for, there were a number of companies that found that very difficult.
Labor also has some questions around sick leave, but is broadly supportive of many of the changes.
There are parts of this that I welcome, and parts such as the bereavement leave and sick leave that's starting from day one. Those are all good changes.
The minister keen to work with her political opponents to refine the law.
I will be open to sitting down with Labor, working.
I watched the stand-up, and that was the answer to this is based on a question that she was asked at the stand-up. Have you done this in a bipartisan way? Have you spoken to the other parties about this yet? And the answer was no, but I'd like to do that from this point in. So that was the pre-question to this answer right now.
Through what their concerns are, because ultimately it's good for business to have a law that will be enduring and that won't become a political football.
Today, just a first step, but many agreeing it's a step in the right direction.
All right, well, there's the story, John. Why don't you just give us your initial thoughts around this legislation? There's an interesting part of this as well, which is it's going to go through the correct process. I wonder why the government has decided to use when I say correct, it's going to go to select committee, it's going to go through 1 reading, 2 readings, whereas everything to now has been fast-tracked. So I'm wondering why they don't deem this one important enough to fast-track. Not that I think it should be. It was just an interesting observation. So it's going to go through the process now. So where are we at today? What do we need to know more about these legislative changes?
Oh, these are the announcements. So this is what's come out. So we'll see a bill introduced, and then it will go through select committee process. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm speculating on behalf of the government, but I don't take a comment about creating enduring law. I don't think that's necessarily disingenuous. I think the business community is interested in that, and I also think, I think it's probably been under consulted so far, and I think. Hearing from more businesses and some legal opinions is probably of interest, whereas there's probably been a bit too much anecdotal evidence and listening to the payroll providers themselves, who caused a lot of the historical problems. So that could be quite genuine. In terms of breaking down the law itself, what we're seeing is really it's a bit of a mixed bag. There's some stuff in there that's just generally good. There are some workers who are going to be worse off. Some groups of workers who are going to lose out on that, and some stuff that's maybe more neutral. Some stuff that's going to require some really complicated maths to figure out who's lost and how much. And then we've seen that push for simplicity as well. And I think it's clearly going to be easier to systematize in a piece of software, which I think was one thing that business wanted.
There was one thing from that piece we just heard. We heard from the bosses, the employers. We didn't really hear from the employees. The ministers saying, "Oh, everybody wins, everybody's happy," and in the story we then heard from the owners of the businesses saying, "We're happy." What's the feedback you're getting from the? I guess it's first day. There may not be any yet, but what is the thoughts around how this is going to benefit the employees? Is what you're seeing at this current stage right, that it's a win-win, or is there these fishhooks we're talking about that you guys have already seen?
Yeah, there are definitely those fishhooks. So there are some small things that every employee is going to benefit from. Some of that will be when you start a new job, and some of it will benefit groups of employees, like those who have the parents who then take parental leave, and then there are big groups of workers who are going to miss out. So the part-timers are a big group. Anyone who gets injured is another group. And the third group is those who include commission and bonuses as a significant part of their income.
Right. So the bonuses won't be a part of the historical pay for them to work it out on.
Yeah, that's one of the things they've taken out, is that currently there are two calculations. There's what you normally earn in a week, and then there's what you've earned over the last year, averaged down to the week. And the employer currently pays the higher of the two. So what she's saying is that actually we're going to be looking at the base rate, basically what you earn an hour, and then that's going to be your holiday pay for the number of hours you take leave. So if you get commission, if that's a big chunk of your income, taking leave, you'll get paid less, quite a bit less, when you take any form of leave.
Right. Hey, Jared, jump in, my friend. Any questions or comments so far?
Yeah, well, two things. One is this 12.5% and what that might mean to somebody doing a lot of overtime or working, longer, and how much they might have made, whether they're going to really lose out in the long run. And also, I think the way in which the story was told on One News is really, like you're saying, Pat, I think this was a fresh start from the beginning for Van Velden after her original attempts to take what Labour had done didn't fly and got rejected. And so she's come back with this. And like you said, this is day one. So it's really, I think we'll probably see some more reaction to it. The questions that we haven't heard yet will be raised in the coming days. So we heard that little bit there from Jan Tinetti, where she was pointing out that there are some things she likes here, but there are probably some issues that do relate to the disadvantages, I think, for the worker here, the part-time worker who is going to actually have their leave clipped. That's my thinking. What do you think, John?
Yeah. I mean, that first point you raise is that's the complicated maths one. So when you're doing overtime, and that's not above like 40 hours a week, it's going to be above your on that. So while it's going to seem like more cash in hand, that's not going to be calculated when you go to take leave. So whether it's more or less, I don't know. That's going to require some pretty in-depth analysis.
Yeah. We should have a look as well, because I mean, I imagine what happens, John, and we talked to Craig Rennie quite a bit, and he gets his numbers and he nerds out for a day and he finds them and goes through and he gets all that. Is it the same sort of thing? Do you spend the next day, 2 days, 3 days kind of going over this with a fine-tooth comb to find out more? Or because it's day one, is it quite a simple idea right now and the detail will come as they take it through the select committee and through into a reading or two?
First, it's not my role, so I won't be doing that. I'll leave that to Craig. I think for that part of it, it's just going to be that really weird question on whether the loading on overtime is more or less than the what the holiday pay would have been. I think for a lot of the rest of it, it's pretty obvious from a day one reading. But then someone needs to get a look at the Act once it's introduced, and then make some more detailed analysis on that as well.
Let's just chuck up what the Greens have said about this. Their first take on day one is women to bear the brunt of sick pay changes. The government's move to strip back sick leave from part-time workers is yet another blow to women across Aotearoa. Stripping back sick leave for part-time workers means women will inevitably shoulder more unpaid labour, says the Greens. We can and must ensure that women are paid fairly, are treated with respect and are safe, things this government is actively undermining. Remember, I'm reading out what the Greens' position is. Getting sick doesn't depend on whether you're full or part-time under these changes. Only some will be protected. Final paragraph I'll read. Part-time workers are disproportionately women, with many balancing jobs with caring responsibilities, like looking after sick children. This move means yet more unpaid work for them, on top of what they are already doing to keep families and our economy going. John, any thoughts around that statement? Does that feel fair to you, what they've pulled out to start off with?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, when you look at who this is going to affect, I've talked in terms of class of worker, these people, those people. When you look at who it affects demographically, it is going to affect women more. They've got that, the boost to the leave coming back from childcare. But what the Greens are talking about is going to affect women more broadly for longer because they work disproportionately part-time. And also if the child is sick, the woman is more likely to use sick leave to look after the child. So it kind of gets women twice in that sting. So yeah, I agree with those comments.
Jared, any other thoughts or questions around this story?
There's something slippery about the way in which I think nobody can really put their hands around what the total money lost or gained here is. And it's at the doorstep of the fact that the government doesn't sort of necessarily handle all of these individual contracts. That's what we heard said by Van Velden. But I'm just going to point out that this is the kind of slippery pattern that we sort of see with Van Velden policies when it comes to disadvantaging women in particular. We saw this in the pay equity, the sort of the vague spaces, the places where they use the term balance and affordable and all these kind of terms. But in the actual fact, no one can quite get their hands around something concrete and say you're better off or you're not just yet. And so I think, there are some wins to this, but I also think that the losses are unclear, and I think that, the women are going to actually be those who demographically are the biggest losers out of this policy.
John, anything to help us wrap up with this? What should we be keeping an eye on? What should we be looking out for as this idea turns into legislation as we're going forward?
Oh, look, I totally agree. I think once you start looking at the analysis, that's when it's going to get interesting. This is going to save businesses, right? It's not going to cost them more. There will be some winners. I think one of the interesting things is with the casual loading going up. Now, part of the reason that they've included sick leave into the casual loading to go along with the annual leave, a lot of casuals were entitled to sick leave but weren't getting it anyway because their bosses didn't think they were, didn't bother doing the calculation, or even the workers themselves didn't know they were. So you might see some people gain as non-compliance drops in one area. But like that sick leave cost, that's going to be hard to calculate, but that is going to be a cost to workers. Yeah.
And the other thing about it seems that, once again, the people that it will impact are the people who are potentially more vulnerable. I'm not even saying if they're not more vulnerable as a people group, but, part-time mums, are more vulnerable to, financially speaking as well. And I don't know, it's as we say, look, I am going to try and be fair, and the devil is in the detail, and we'll see it as it pays out. But I just have seen too many times with this government, when they release a recent idea, or they're heading towards a legislation, the more you flesh it out, the more you see, okay, we need to be really careful because this group of people are going to be impacted really, really harshly. So I will wait with hopeful anticipation of all good things, but with a keen eye to check over the details to make sure we alert to people if there are big Maui hooks in there, big massive ones that are going to be obvious to get out. Yeah. Okay, John. Hey, well, thank you for joining us. Is there any particular thought you want to leave us with tonight?
I think maybe, just that one we didn't really cover was about the change to the ACC.
Yep.
So
let's do it now.
Yeah. So no ACC, you won't be accruing leave while you're off injured. Now, again, it's going to affect different people differently. If you're going to be injured for more than 1 year, well, maybe you didn't need a holiday if you weren't working. If you're injured for a short period of time, you might not notice it much. But people who they get injured for a few months, that's going to stuff their leave for the year. Plans could be ruined. Plans they already had could be ruined. They might not get the summer break they're expecting to, not have that time with their families. So again, what they're basically thinking about, a lot of times they think about like one scenario, and then that leads their legislation. We heard about Van Velden had this thing in her head that, if a part-timer had 2 jobs, would they then get 20 days of leave? So, well, maybe, but it's a bit of a phantom because a lot of part-timers will work shorter shifts and actually work 2 jobs and have 2 jobs on the same day. So when they call in sick, they're calling in sick twice to get 1 day off. So there's a counterpoint. And I think some of these changes are kind of led by this scenario out there. But when we look at actually more broadly, it's not such a mischief, and the solution actually creates another problem somewhere else.
Yeah. And so to spell out, and you tell me if I'm right here, because I've heard what you said and I've jotted some numbers down. If you're on ACC, so basically if we've got 4 weeks leave a year, that means every 3 months we're accruing 1 week of leave. Therefore, if you're an ACC for 3 months, in that year, you'll only accrue 3 weeks of leave, not 4.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's significant. That's significant. So has there been any reasoning or rationale as to why they're going to stop accruing leave when on ACC?
Not that I've heard. I mean, I'm guessing, but basically, if someone's off for a whole year, you suddenly have to pay them 4 weeks, and so that's a burden on business, and that's not fair. And it's like, maybe, but it's that scenario you've highlighted, which is where workers are going to lose out.
Maybe the middle ground would be something like anything under 3 months you can still accrue up to 3 months of ACC or something. They can work it out in the select committee. Hey, John, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you giving us some time. We will keep an eye on that, and we'll be in touch again with you guys at the CTU when we know more details about this and many other things that you help us with and help us figure out. So appreciate your time tonight. Thanks for being a part of the show.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Gerard.
See ya.
All the best.